Hey guys, Benny in the shed back with you again. Today I thought maybe we'd look at some of the stuff that I've printed. I promised everybody I'd show them the awards that I created, and so we'll take a look at some of those prints. I haven't got the originals here. The only ones I've got are some ones that were actually rejects, but you still will get the idea. The other thing I want to cover in this video is the preparation of a file for DLP printing or resin printing. It's a different story to standard plastic printing. For a start, it all happens upside down, and the actual purpose of support in DLP or resin printing is slightly different to what it is in FDM printing. So we'll get on and have a look at a few things. Okay, so what have I been printing? This is a big chunk of an award that I designed and printed. I actually bought my Wanhao D7 to do this job, and subsequently, you know, I really dived in at the deep end, and I was really relying on the machine being as advertised to get this job done. As you can see, it's a fairly substantial piece. It measures around about 170 millimeters high, which is the full distance that you can print in the Z-axis, and I also had to turn this 15 degrees on the platform to fit the volume of this into the printer. So I've got a still picture of the awards when they were finished. They had a printed base that I printed out of Colorfab bronze, which came out really nice, and I just buffed that up with some steel wool and clear coated it. These are clear coated as well. That sort of brings back the transparency, and the awards themselves had RGB LEDs fitted to this end that then threw light up into the entire award. An important aspect of model preparation is orientation. Now, this is a really pretty mermaid ring that I downloaded from one of the sharing services, and as you can see, there's a lot of detail on it, and I've currently got this open in Flashprint, which is the Flashforge native slicing software. I've found this one really nice and easy to use. I've also got a Flashforge Hunter that I've got on demo at the moment, so to create files for that I have to use this software anyway. So if we just simply go into the support menu here, and by the way, the printer setting here is Flashforge Hunter. So if you're going to use this software for the Wanhao, just select up Flashforge Hunter, and then you'll be right. You'll get the right kind of supports. So we'll hit auto supports here and just see what we get. It might take a little while to calculate, and there we go. Okay, so as you can see, the supports are very dense, and also something to take particular notice of are these very, very small support columns here. Now, what's going to happen if I just blindly accept this as my slicing job? I'm going to get a really bad print out of this. One of the things that's going to happen is that all these tiny little support elements are going to be almost impossible to remove. So we'll clear these supports, and it might be worthwhile just quickly now having just a quick look at the support options So our overhang threshold's 45 degrees. You could bring that back to 40 and not cause any kind of dramas. I've got the cross connection. I had that switched off, but if you've got it on, what it'll do is make like a almost like a truss shape between columns, and it tends to, you know, well, it's not so much the resin that it uses up; it makes the support that much more dense. And we've also got an exterior only checkbox here, so that's quite useful. That will cut back the amount of support that you generate. If we go into post size now, the tip diameter is something to pay attention to. What I've seen with the support columns is that in general, where they contact the model, they don't taper down the way that they look in the software. They tend to sort of expand out actually at the top. So actually, you know, I'm thinking I could actually wind this back, you know, to maybe 17 or something like that. So it won't do it. Okay, so there's a few options. So what we need to do is to look at reorienting this model to get more effective support. Now I've got some examples that I'll show you of actual prints, and it goes through. I'll go through a couple of iterations of this. So we'll go back without generating any supports. We'll go into rotate mode, and I'm just going to rotate this around like that, so roughly 90 degrees from where it was before. Now with that rotated, we'll just go back to the support menu and click on auto supports again and just see what happens. Okay, so now we have very, very dense supports here, and a great way to check this out is to look in the bottom view. So if you want to, you can click on bottom view and zoom right in, and that is just way too dense, just massively too dense. And what you are seeing here, particularly with this jewelry setting, is you've got all of these chip settings here. So chip diamonds or chip stones are meant to go in here, and then they're held in with these little tiny knobs that stick out. Now the software has generated a column for every single one of those, and the reason it's done that is because the support is needed for any item in the model that's going to print without being connected to something. And I'm going to go into a different software to demonstrate that to you. I'll go into Autodesk Print Studio to demonstrate this. I've now got the same model open in Autodesk Print Studio. If you've got a Fusion 360 license, you can actually download this at no charge and use it. I haven't used it much for support generation or anything like that. The main thing that I've found it's really useful for is visualizing the slices. So to understand supports in resin printing, it's useful to look at a representation of the images that are going to be projected in the printer, and that's what this preview in Print Studio allows you to do. So I'm just going to roll this preview forward a little bit. I haven't generated any supports, and I'm just going to see if I can point out, okay, now here is the type of area that needs to be supported. The thing to realize about DLP printing in particular is that the areas that need support are areas that are going to print without being connected to anything else. So that's why there's so much density of support in, if we go back to flash print, that's why you've got all this dense support here, is because right in here there is going to be a little overhanging section there that is a little island all by itself. It's not connected to anything. When that layer prints, it's not connected to anything. And if you think about the implications of that in a DLP printer, what that means is the subsequent layer, when it forms, it may not incorporate that little island. In fact, if it's big enough, the island won't separate from the FEP film with the rest of the print. It'll stay on the film because it's not connected to anything. So this is what you've got to think about with the support generation. And what I've come to the conclusion of is that it's not entirely necessary for all these little tiny weeny things to be supported. And if you do that, if you allow this density of support to form, what is going to happen is that these will tend to form like a solid mass. It won't be individual little columns anymore. It'll be a solid mass, and that will really compromise the quality of your print. So it's really quite important to minimize the support and really get as much space as you can between the columns. And I'll show you some practical examples of that I've shot. Okay, I've rotated this model to a position that I think will generate the least amount of support columns. I'm using Flashforge Flash Print, which is a free software to download. I use it with all my other printers. I've got a lot of Flashforge 3D printers. If you want to use this for generating DLP support, then go up here to the print menu, to machine type, and select the Flashforge Hunter. So I've been over the support options in earlier on in the video. So I think I've got this about where I want it now. So I'll generate some supports. And this is looking good. I want to keep any support material away from the detail of the mermaid. One thing I'm picking up here is that a lot of these little clasps here for the settings are attracting support material, and I don't want that amount of support material in the print. So I'm going to delete those, but here's one I won't delete. That's actually supporting the body of the model. So is that one there. These ones can all go. What I'm really after here is to thin this stuff out and reduce the amount of density. Another thing I'm really keen to get rid of is any that are actually penetrating the model. This is not a very sophisticated software for generating DLP support. There are others that are superior to this. There's the software for the D9 printer that you can look into. That generates quite good support. And also the 3D print utility put out by Autodesk is pretty good as well. I haven't spent much time with that, and I haven't figured out how to manually add support in that software, but that's quite promising as well. Okay, so I'm thinning out here. I'm getting rid of these ones that are there to support these little projections here for the stone settings. There's a couple more there. That one can go, and that one can go as well. Now the print will still work quite well without all of those columns. Mainly what I'm trying to avoid is having the support columns turn into big aggregations of resin, which will then kind of, you know, morph into the print itself and subsequently give you a fairly bad quality print. If we look at the bottom here, we can see a couple that are pretty close together, so I can probably lose that one. And there's another one that's intersecting the print. We can lose that. This one's very close, but probably that can be cleaned up. And so I've thinned these out enough now that we've still got pretty good a pretty good amount of support columns, which will have should have enough adhesion to work properly. Maybe I'll let that one go as well. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Okay, so we'll go back out of here, and we will save the supports to the file to make sure that when we do a save as up here, they're actually part of this file. Now it's important to change this to STL at this point. You can't save this as an FPP file or anything else, or like change the file extension after you've saved it from here. You want to save this as an STL file. So save. Done this a couple of times, so I'll be doing that. I'll be going over things now. I'm going to go into the print menu. The good thing about Flash Print is it does allow you to save a new resin profile if you want to. That's quite handy. There's not a huge amount of adjustment in here. It's relatively simple. Once you get your resin dialed in, you're in pretty good shape. So click OK. Once again, we'll be saving over the top of an already saved file. And I'm doing this so that I can show you the preview mode, and we'll look at what we've done by deleting those support columns. So that's probably an area in there that we'll see some unconnected growth. Yeah, there's a few. Okay, so we'll zoom into here. Whoop, and this is what we're talking about. Those little islands there that are growing unconnected. So they're going to grow probably three layers in some cases before they connect to the model. And the possibility is that they will end up, those little islands will end up floating around in the resin, which means after you've printed this, you will have to strain your resin. There's probably is that? No, that one's connected. So it's worthwhile going through this. If your goal is to create a really good print, it's a good idea to go through these preview modes and see what you're up against. Those little separated areas are going to potentially become just loose items or loose parts floating around in your resin. So straining is a must. Oh, look, there's a biggie. How many layers till that connects to something? Wow. Wow. I think that's a that's maybe one that I shouldn't have deleted right there. That might be worthwhile going back in and adding a support column for that, and just putting up with whatever problems that delivers to us down at this end of the print, where it might actually intersect with the bottom of the ring. But that's a biggie. I wouldn't leave that alone if I was going to print this right now. Okay, so hopefully you've got something out of this. You've got an understanding of what you're dealing with Suppport, and how that works in the slicing process. So I'm quite happy with this. One thing I did was, because it's the jewellery piece, it's got lots and lots of very fine detail where there are expected to be stones set in this, very small chip stones. And the software was wanting to put a support post in for every one of those slightly overhanging stone settings, which is just crowding the thing up. And when you see support columns going very close to your model, you should look to see whether they're absolutely necessary. If they're not, get rid of them. Others, you know, tend to get into big clumps, as you see. You got to thin those out, and so yeah, this is looking pretty good. I'm going to remove these supports and then give this a quick spray with some paint to see how it comes up. Just going to hit this with a bit of satin black automotive paint. It's just an acrylic paint, and nothing special. So the good thing about it is that it's a satin finish, and when it dries, sorry about that, I just took that out of shot. So I'll just try and get reasonable coverage on it without soaking it, and we'll have to come back and see it when it's dried. Anyway, that's it there. Well, come back and have a look at that when it's dried off. Well, the paint has dried, and already I'm picking up a few areas here where the print's actually got support material mixed in with the shapes, which is not going to come out. Also, some of the areas here I noticed earlier on should be hollowed out or free. This is just, yeah, up here. There should be some little sort of filigree patterns here, and those should be open areas there, but they've over cured or they've got cured accidentally, and that's pulled those shapes or distorted those shapes a little. Things to notice that turned out well are the actual figurine here, which I'm not sure if you're picking that up really well, but there's her face, and these are stone settings here running through here, which have turned out quite sharp. Oh, man, jumping around all over the place. The scales here in the mermaid's tail are quite nice, and it could do with a little bit more refinement and a little bit more cleanup. Probably you wouldn't just go right ahead and cast this. You can see there the stone settings really are mushed up here, so they're no good. Some of the ones around here turned out quite good. Look at these ones on the edge here, if you can pick that up. They're quite sharp. So yeah, all things considered, that's not a bad print for jewellery casting, if that's what you're into.